and welcome to our ATVC panel about science communication. I am Cecilia Prada. I am a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard University, and I am part of the Early Career Scientist Committee of ATVC. Today we have an extraordinary group of women that are experts in science communication. And today they're here to share their work and experience with us, and also to encourage us to be more involved in science for the public. They are also here to answer all of our questions. Jen is going to help me with the panel. I don't know if Jen, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here.
So today I'm going to let our panelists to introduce themselves, so I don't take time from them. And they have short presentation to show us how they start working with art and science, and they're also going to share some of their work. And after that, we have some 15 minutes of discussion and questions. And after that, we have the last 20 minutes, we're going to have an activity with small groups that we're going to explain at that point. So with that, I'm going to start with Erin Kuprovich. So you can start. So I can stop my...
Awesome. All right, I will share my screen and jump right in. Can everybody see that? All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much again for the invitation. This is really fun. The Early Career Scientist committee is really near and dear to my heart. And I'm just gonna jump right in. Actually, I started a timer so I can keep myself to 5 minutes. So feel free to just yank me off if I go too long. As Ceci said, I'm Erin Kuprowicz. I'm based at the University of Connecticut, kind of a split position between the Connecticut State Museum of Natural History and the EEB department, so Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. So very quickly, who am I? I kind of categorize myself very broadly as an ecologist. I study plant-animal interactions using specimens in the museum, but I am a really hardcore field biologist. And also how these scale up to affect communities in the changing world, like in the Anthropocene right now. I do a lot of on-the-ground manipulative experiments in the tropics and the temperates. I'll only talk about tropical stuff today. I work on specimen-based research, looking at mammal and seed traits and how these affect seeds in the field. And again, anthropogenic effects on animal and plant populations, climate breakdown, hunting, and carbon storage are kind of some big projects right now. Broad sweeping overview again. These are some of the sites that I work in. I work on potato-shaped animals. That's kind of how I categorize. And again, I'm a mammologist by training, but I will say I'm an ecologist. I broadly study how mammals interact with plants in their environments. So agoutis, this is at Las Cruces in Costa Rica. Collared peccaries, also in Costa Rica, but also in South America. And so that's just a little piece of science communication. I love this picture. For some reason, it just cracks me up. Again, I like to do a lot of experiments in the field. UConn picked up a project I did a few years ago at this point, where I made seeds out of clay and looked at what agoutis did to them. So these are artificial seeds. And it was really fun and it worked really, really well. Jumping into the questions, the prompts you all gave us to kind of hit on, why do I use art to communicate my science? I do it for a lot of different reasons. I find that people tend to really respond positively to art that they see. Again, you hit it on the title of this panel. It's easy to digest. A picture really is worth, I'd say, more than 1,000 words. You can use art to convey really complex scientific concepts. It's in STEAM, so we have science, see if I remember it, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So arts and science are right there. And I think fundamentally for me, it's really fun. So I find it's kind of a release. I like to do art as like a mental health break a lot of times. And so I like doing it because it's fun, and if it's useful and I can use it in my science, even better. And again, I'm kind of like zooming really fast through this to keep on time, but I'll show you some examples. And I actually have a section in my CV. So this was pretty easy to pull together, where I started putting published art that I have in my own scientific papers. And I've also published some work in other people's scientific papers, but I've done things like logos and stuff too. Again, more for fun. Sometimes I get paid for it. This is one of my own papers that's now 10 years old. What is time? Where I have, again, potato-shaped animals, but I'm using them to show like a scientific setup in the field of how I put seeds out with little cages, how that affected what animals were able to interact with the seeds, and then looking at like survival analyses. I'm not going to get into the details of the paper, but I kind of find little pieces here and there that, again, can illustrate design work really well in papers. This is one I thought was really fun. Again, probably like 10 years ago at this point. I had caged and uncaged seedlings. And so I actually had just really easy percent of seedlings alive after I forget how many days in the forest, 140 days or something. And I had these 4 different species. So I made little drawings of the seedlings, and the bars of the graph I actually had caged and uncaged. I love that for some reason. I thought it was really creative. But this paper, I will say, one of the reviewers hated the drawings. He was like, get those out of there. I don't like it. And this is where one person liked it, reviewer number 2 hated them. And the editor was like, keep those, they're awesome. I want the illustrations. And so I've found that usually people tend to like seeing drawings in papers as long as they make sense with what you're presenting. Again, another paper kind of showing a diagram, but having a little bit more art in there. This was a fun one. This drawing was for a flood we had in our collections here, where we had skeletal specimens that were damaged by a ceiling pipe bursting. And me and the students I had working on this project called it Operation Bone Rescue. And we got funding from the school to fix everything up. And we actually made a t-shirt out of this, but it also was published in the paper. Again, kind of illustrating difficult concepts, using art, and I'm zooming through this. I know you can't digest any of this, but kind of infographics as well. I'm not super good at them, but this is a cool one showing like numbers of species of different insect or hexapod groups, what we know, what's described, what we estimate is there minimally, and what we think might be the true estimate. Throwing some logos out there. I tend to like bright things. Again, I can kind of go into more detail as we get into questions. But that's it. I think I was mostly good on my 5 minutes. And I know that was a very whirlwind tour, but thanks again for listening.
Erin, thank you so much. Those are amazing examples. I love that you let that drawing in the article. Like, So next is Dr. Jennifer Power, and you can start then.
Let me know when you can see this, okay? Thanks. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Oh, wait, here. Oh God, this is like the wrong, dang it. Now I have to, sorry, not in the right place. Oh my gosh. That's already cutting into my 5 minutes. Here we go. Okay, momentico. 1 second. Well, in the meantime, I'll say thank you for this invitation to this really fun. This is not where I wanted to be. Sorry about that. I'm just going to go back. Okay, cool. Now you can see this, right? Woof. Now here we go. Thank you all for this invitation to this amazing panel and this super fun webinar. Yeah, I'm just going to start in. I didn't time this, so we're just going to see what happens. So in addition to thanking the organizers and the participants, I really want to give a big shout out to Patricia Sampaio, who I think is the person who pulled me in to doing art and science because, well, as you can see, I'm not really an artist. But what I wanted to do was to talk to you really briefly about why all of us should be doing art. So how many reasons do you need to do art? I would say you only need one, but I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons. Why do art? Because it makes you a better biologist. I'm not a good artist, as you can see. I really just started. This was kind of my pandemic project thing, but I'm probably not even a good biologist. I would argue that doing art makes you a better biologist because it really helps you, me, everyone look more closely at what it is we're studying. So that's reason number one. So again, how can we use art to help us be better biologists? I think it helps us look at things more closely. This is just an example of a page from my nature journal where I was at a lake in Minnesota, and the lake, around the margins of the lake was wild rice. And I picked up some of this wild rice, and really by staring at it closely, I could really understand how the seeds were attached to the stalk, and then what happened to the seeds as after they were dispersed with this long tail that hopefully embeds them in the muck at the bottom of the lake. So I think we can use art to hone our observations of nature. Other reasons, and I think Erin has really touched on this really well, we can make art because it helps us share our science. And we can do this in many different ways. The graphical abstracts that Erin showed, this is just another example of some pictures that I started drawing when I was working at La Selva many years ago. And I turned this into a story to illustrate the principles of that some animals are diurnal and some animals are nocturnal. So I pulled these drawings together in a story. This story was published in a magazine called Current Conservation Kids. It's called Night and Day in the Rainforest. And when I think this is a friend of mine and his daughter, my friends from Costa Rica, and what I think this illustrates is that we can use art to tell stories that are locally important. You know, this girl is not likely to encounter a robin or a cardinal, you know, but she's much more likely to encounter an agouti or a paca or a monkey. So we can use art as a way to tell stories that are relevant to the communities where we're working. Another reason or another way we can use art is to help explain our science. This was a packing list for a trip that I made, a field trip to Costa Rica. And instead of just write down a list of everything I needed to bring for my field work, I decided to draw it as I was going, as I was packing. And I could have just told people, my neighbors, my friends, my family, oh, when I go to Costa Rica, these are the things that I pack. But when you show them a picture, it really helps illustrate this point of why we take the crazy things with us that we take to the field. Another reason to use art, to do art, because you're not looking at a screen. We're embedded in a digital world. How many times a day do you look at your phone? Or a screen or your computer? When you're doing art, one of the best reasons I think we can, or one of my main motivations is to disengage from my phone, from my screen, and really be present and make a deeper connection to nature. Yet another reason why we can make art, it's because when you're looking at something, when you're drawing it, when you're interacting with it in that way, you remember things better. It's a memory tool. These were some pictures I drew from a trip my family took to California. And now I really remember those moments much more so than if I had just been taking pictures with my cell phone. So again, we're tropical biologists, ecologists. We get to go to amazing places. When we do art about those places, it helps us remember our travels. And so now I definitely am keeping a travel journal in addition to my nature journal. And it helps me remember these stories, these little details that make up the travels. Another way we can use art again, and maybe it's because like I'm kind of in the time of my life where you're like, is my memory faltering? Yes. I have a daily drawing practice now where I have a calendar and I just do 5 minutes of art every day, something that happened the previous day. And this is a way to help me curate my memories and remember little details about every day. If you're don't be intimidated. I would say if you want to know how to get started, but you're stuck, just make your own field guide. This is a field guide I made to the bark of the trees in my neighborhood. I was really interested in bark and how to draw it. And so when I was taking my dog for a walk every day, I just started looking at the bark and I made my own field guide. It's a very local field guide. It won't help anyone outside of my neighborhood, but it helped me. Don't just do your own art, help others to do art. I taught a nature journeying freshman seminar at the University of Minnesota, and this is a kid, Ethan Liu, and he is an anatomy student, and you could just tell how he was using nature journaling as a way to better understand how things are put together. Other reasons to help people do their own art. It's just fun. And here's a big shout out to Patricia Sampaio, who's really been a strong proponent of bringing nature art to ATBC. So yay. And last, and this is last, why should we do art? Do it for yourself. You can do it to share, you can do it to involve people in science, but do it for yourself. It's a wonderful mental health break, I guess I would say. And so that's it. That's all I have.
Jen, thank you so much. That's amazing. And I'm hearing La Selva, so I can see your drawings, and definitely it's the same forest. So next we have Dr. Wing Ying Wan. So you can start.
Let me share the screen. So can you see the screen? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So first I would like to thank for the organizer and Professor Zhang.
Oh,
Oh,
I think.
Hello, hi.
hi, you are back.
Yeah, you're back.
I'm okay. Where am I now? Okay,
Can you share your screen?
I'm not okay. All right. So I have been a scientific illustrator since 2020. Now I based in Taipei, Taiwan. And before I becoming an illustrator, I spent a long time in academia research field. My background is my good background is botany. I got my PhD degree in molecular biology. After that, I also worked as a postdoctoral fellow in academia Sinca for 7 years. Yeah, it's a long journey. So why did I decide to switch my career? That is because during the whole research process, when compared to generating the idea or doing the experiment, I find I especially enjoy in the last part, that is writing a manuscript, forming the figures and telling the story. I like organized data. And I also find I'm good at visualizing some abstract concept into image. So when I know there's a job called scientific illustrator, I decide to switch my career. And I went to California to study the scientific illustration program in 2019. So you can see the outside of the classroom, there's nothing there. So we can focus on doing our homework. And this is the left image is the classroom look like. So after finish this program, I come back to Taiwan and establish my studio. And I post my webpage on the Facebook and announce everyone that, hello, I'm a scientific illustrator now. Please give me some job. And I'm lucky. I really also got some jobs from advisor and lab mates. So let me share some my works to you. There are two major parts of my work. The first part is making figures for research and publication. Under several situations, the professor will contact me. First is when they publish a journal, they need a graphic abstract. Or when they present a talk, they need a good image to impress the audience, especially when the audience include the grand founder or reviewers. And also, a collab sometimes needs some good image to tell their clients how the experiments will proceed. So this image helps them to communicate with other experts. Other than graphic abstract, I also do some motion graphic. Since the young generation cannot live without video, so some professor would like to animate their work. For example, sorry. For example, this is a animation explain how RNA sequence features regulate the protein translation rates. Another part of my work is giving a talk to introduce what is science illustration. And I also hold a botanical illustration workshop for the general public. So above is my briefly introduction. If you want to see more of my work, you can go to my website. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Next, we have Dr. Sarah McConnell. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Sarah McAnulty. And yeah, today I'll be talking very briefly about communicating science with street art. So my day job right now, so I got my PhD in molecular and cell biology from the University of Connecticut, actually. So we've got two UConn people here today. Hello. I was in the next building over from EEB. But now I am the executive director of a science education nonprofit called Skype a Scientist that I founded back while I was doing my PhD in 2017. There's a lot of things we do. Most of the things I'll be talking about today are art, of course, but we primarily match scientists with classrooms, scout troops, libraries, anybody who needs to talk to a scientist, we will match you up for free. We also do live streams. We do like science trivia. Since the pandemic began, it's been online, but historically we did them at dive bars all over the East Coast from Boston, Connecticut, Providence, Philadelphia. We're based in Philadelphia now, which is where I grew up. We do all kinds of other events, and what we've been doing more and more in the last couple of years is public art, which I'll be telling you about today. This all started because back in 2018, I decided to turn my car into the Squidmobile. The Squidmobile is just my car, it's just a RAV4, but I took paint pens and decorated it with a bunch of squid. I don't really, at the time, definitely I didn't think of myself as an artist. I still don't think I'm like particularly technically talented. But you know, if you draw enough squid, you get good at just drawing squid. If you ask me to draw a whale, it would look like a potato for sure. But squid I can handle. maybe even not a potato. Anyway, the point of the Squidmobile was breaking through the social barriers that we put ourselves in. In the last, 10 years, we've seen ourselves get more and more siloed, and more opportunities for ourselves to only listen to people who are like us with the social media landscapes. And I was really frustrated by that. I was doing a lot of science communication online, and finding that I was just speaking with the same audiences over and over and over again. And I love those audiences. They like talking about science, but I wanted to break out of that. So I decided, well, everybody uses the road. Let's try the Squidmobile. Couple iterations later, we ended up with the SquidFacts hotline, which you can text for SquidFacts. Since beginning the SquidFacts project, 68,000 people have texted the SquidFacts hotline, which is kind of wild to think about. We've gotten people texting from all over the place because people will see the Squidmobile or the squid art that I'll be talking about in a moment, posted on social media, and then more and more people will engage with the SquidFacts hotline. People are often confused, bewildered, surprised that science content is showing up in the spaces that I tend to put them in. I think kind of taking advantage of people's confusion and bewilderment is something we don't do enough of. The world is wild and confusing, and the more we can kind of enchant people with science content, the better. A lot of times content coming from science, particularly lately, but certainly all the time, has been pretty bad. When you see a scientist come on the news, a lot of people are bracing for impact, like, oh no, what new virus is there? What new catastrophe has come from climate change? It's a lot of bad news. So I try to use my art to put some good news out there from science to kind of balance out the emotional calculus that people have when thinking about science. The bad news is so important, but if we want people to listen to the bad news, we kind of need them to not brace for impact when a scientist comes on. So that's kind of the heart of the SquidFacts project. In addition to the Squidmobile, I do what's called slap tagging. That's taking a sticker and putting it on whatever. There are some regions that this is going to be super normal in, and there are some regions in the country / world where you shouldn't do this for sure. So I specifically put SquidFacts stickers in places where the street art culture is already part of the local culture. We have a bunch of different types of stickers. Many of them highlight the SquidFacts hotline, not all of them. In addition to stickers, we do wheat pasting. Wheat pasting is a street art technique that is cheap as heck to do. All you need to do is make an image. Ideally, you pick paint that can handle UV, so like the sunlight. And isn't going to run, so like watercolor would not be a good choice. You want to use something that can handle getting rained on, but you put just like Lowe's Home Depot style wallpaper glue on a thing, and then you put your paper on top of that, and then you put more wallpaper glue on top of that. It's super technically easy, and you get to make bigger things than you would maybe with a slap tag. These are all hand drawn by me. I've got 1 zillion of them. My friend invited me to give a talk in Houston in a couple weeks. So I've been making a ton of these that I intend to put all over Houston, Texas in a couple weeks. I've put both the stickers and the wheat pastes all over the place. This is Philadelphia. This is where home is for me. Each of those little bubbles is a place I've put a sticker or wheat paste. If you want to see where I've put them all over the country, every time anybody invites me to give a talk, I bring squid with me. Sometimes I don't put them up. Like I went to Long Beach, and that place is not a squid art. It's not a street art friendly place. So we skipped Long Beach, but Los Angeles has a ton. So if you want to look at more, you can play with this little Google map. This map makes it look not impressive, but I assure you there's a lot of squid on here. Okay, so sometimes the art is done by me, and that is when it's squid related. But a lot of times we hire professional artists to help us out here. So here's a project we've got going on this summer in Philadelphia. So in the Philadelphia area, like the city empties out in the summer to go down the shore, so to the Jersey coast. And I was sitting here trying to think like where are people interacting with content that's not on social media? Where are people just reading stuff that's not on the computer on your phone? And I was kind of spitballing with some friends here in Philly. And one of them was like, oh, like I always read those little bar coasters, those like disposable bar coasters that usually come from like the beer distributor or whatever. And I was like, that's it. We'll put some science content there. So we got a very small grant from a local organization to basically hire artists and print coasters. Instead of the Squid Facts hotline for this project, we're doing the Shore Facts hotline. A lot of people go down the shore, they drink, they hang out with their families, but they're not really engaging with the wildlife that lives down the shore. And I think part of that is because the water there is cloudy. It's murky. You can't see your feet at the bottom when it's 2 feet deep. So you don't see the wildlife there. And we're trying to get people to really think about the wildlife there with these 3 animals, the sea angel, which you can see if you just like look over the edge of a dock for 20 minutes, ctenophores, same situation, and horseshoe crabs. Each coaster comes with a fact about the animal illustrated. And then there's also a bunch of facts that you can get on a different version of the Squid Facts hotline, this time the Shore Facts hotline. We're trying to do some bigger projects this year. We are working with another local artist. His name is Sean Martirana, lives one neighborhood over, and also with the local Creative Arts Public School here in Philly to do a huge mural on this wall. This one's going to be focusing on the ecosystem of the Delaware River. The Squid Facts project, I kind of do everywhere. The other projects, we're really trying to target to the community that's there, talk about something relevant to them. So the Shore Facts hotline is relevant because everybody goes down the shore. We're doing it specifically in the summertime when people are going back and forth between the coast and Philadelphia. For this project, this is going in a neighborhood that is directly connected to the river in part of the city called the River Wards, so the Delaware River neighborhoods. A lot of people in this neighborhood where I live will just like kick trash into the sewer grates, which goes directly into the river. I'd love for people to not do that. And so we're trying to create care for the ecosystem from reminding them, hey, there's actual animals. There's an ecosystem here. It's not just a dead shipping lane. It's a wildlife area that's getting healthier over time, believe it or not. So that's that project. I'll stop talking because I don't want to talk for too long. But long story short, why do street art or science art in general? Social media keeps us in silos. The people who follow me on social media, they willingly followed a squid biologist. So I'm not saying it's always preaching to the choir, but a lot of the time it is. It's fun. It's great. I like it. But I want to break through that kind of self-selection of content. You can do that with street art. You don't need to use the internet at all to access street art. We can reach people who aren't using their phones at all. I'm also the vice president of a local community organization that does like mutual aid and community events and all that. And I have really learned that more of the population than we realize is not using the internet. We have to get information about like city programs, that kind of thing, to a lot of these folks from knocking doors and hanging flyers because they don't have email addresses. Certainly that's a problem here in Philly. You can also tailor your message really hyper locally to the community that you're in. That was mentioned by some other folks here this morning. Online, it's tough to really get that content directly to people in specific local communities. With street art, you can really dig into that. And also because it is joyful, it is fun. Making art is good for your soul, I think. And so as one thing I try to always say when I'm talking to people about almost science communication generally is, as Jake the dog from Adventure Time says, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. So if you have any doubt that you should try engaging with this, just do it. If it's not perfect, it's okay. And that's all I've got for you this morning.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. That was really inspiring, especially for someone who has no artistic abilities. So thank you for reminding me that it's okay to suck at art. So we had some really interesting and diverse ways of looking at art. We have about 5 minutes for questions. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But we'll start off with a question that I received that is, all of you talked about different types of art and the benefits of art, but can each of you maybe speak very briefly to what the biggest challenge is with doing either communication the way that you, through your method, or with just art in general, communication via art in general? So we'll just go in the same order at which you presented. So Erin, would you mind starting?
Sure. I guess very briefly, the first thing that popped into my head in terms of a challenge is honestly finding the time to do it. That's something that I struggle with. Just like as we advance in our careers, I feel like everything, you just have less and less like free time, even though I try to carve it out. As I mentioned, it's kind of like, it's fun for me. I like doing it. It's really effective, but it's not, I mean, I'm very entrenched in academia. And so my currency is papers, grants, student training. And so it's kind of like, well, if it's not going to produce that or help out with that, you have to find a way of getting that done, kind of extra. So for me, it's time and just kind of like distilling ideas down, I think, too, taking a really big complex concept and finding the core of that to illustrate and making it really effective.
Awesome. Thank you. Jennifer, do you mind taking that question?
Yeah, well, and also I agree with everything that Erin said, but I'll add a build on that perspective. I think one of the barriers that I encounter is people's reservations that they don't have artistic skills, and I think that we all do. We all can be an artist, and I think it just getting over that hump of, oh, this isn't good, this isn't what I wanted it to look like. I took a art class at Yosemite National Park last year, and it was like a 4-hour watercolor class, and the instructor was great, and she said something that has really stuck with me. If you don't like how it turned out, lower your expectations. And so that, I think, is my motto for everything now. But I think that is a barrier. People don't feel confident in their artistic skills, but it's not about that. It's really just about expressing yourself.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yen, would you mind?
Yeah, for me, I think the challenge is finding the balance between science and art. Because when I serve for the scientists, they always trying to put everything that they would like to share their information, their research work. But in the art part, sometimes the less is more. So you try to find a balance. And other example is scientists will critical for some details, but that is artist doesn't care. For example, some angle for the protein subunits, from this angle, it has to contact in that point. But in our artist angle, which has overall fine is enough. So I still try to find a balance that can satisfy my clients and my art sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I definitely have felt that, Yang. The talking to the artist and talking to the scientist and balancing those two is definitely a struggle. For me, it's mostly funding. We're really trying to do some kind of big eye-catching projects this year. To give you a sense, 1,000 square foot mural is going to cost us about $40,000 to hire everybody. We have to do some like mason work on the wall. It's like there's inexpensive science communication we can do. The wheat paste costs like $3 each, totally doable, but don't last as long, don't make up as big of an impact on the community. And so funding is the biggest hurdle that we have to get through. Funding and sometimes like city codes and stuff to get approval to put a big permanent as much as permanent art can be in public spaces.
That's really interesting. Thank you all so much. So we have time for just one more question really briefly before we move everyone into groups. And I wondered, all of you have different types of communication methods. And I was wondering if you could speak to whether there is one type of method that you find most effective for communicating one piece of science. So for example, is there, if you're communicating to a certain audience, would you choose a podcast or something like that? So is there a vein in which one method of communication you have found really successful in certain situations? And we'll take that question also in the same order that you presented it. So Erin, if you don't mind starting.
Oh, you don't give me a lot of time to think, but this is good. I don't know. I tend to stick to the visual media realm. So like I'm not really, I've made like videos for YouTube because I've had to. It's like something I don't feel very comfortable with, but I feel much more comfortable with like two-dimensional graphic design. And so that's what I tend to stick to. And I love like comics. I think that's something that people, again, it's like, it takes a lot of work to distill the ideas down to kind of simplified graphics. But I think that's very effective for all sorts of different media. So, but again, I only stick to drawing. That's it.
Awesome.
Great. I guess it's me next. Yeah, I would say most of the kind of art communication I've done or art outreach has involved students, either grade school students or university students. And so I think the advice I have there is to really keep it simple. They could use a ballpoint pen and a pencil and a piece of notebook paper. You don't need to invest in hundreds of dollars of expensive art supplies to actually use art as a tool to improve your observation skills. So that would be, that's the kind of art outreach I do, is to help people do art on their own. And I think we want to just tell people, just grab a pen. This really, all you need is a pen and a piece of paper and your eyes, go out there and experience and write down what you observe.
Thank you. That's really inspirational.
I think it's a good question, but since I am a graphic designer, so I can only answer that I thought visual art can fit most of the case. Yeah, because I didn't have a podcast, so I cannot compare. The only thing I can think about is when your project is about the sounds or like the birds or other voice related topic, maybe through the podcast, you can give more information. And among the graphic design, I find the animation is suitable for the time related project. For example, the circadian rhythm or other. And of course, protein structure is suitable 3D dimension. But that's all the visual parts.
Thank you so
That's
much.
my thought.
Thank you. And then Sarah, if you just want to briefly put in what your thoughts on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on like what I'm hoping the person I'm communicating with is trying to get out of it. So like if I'm trying to convince a person to start masking, like if it's around COVID or climate, I think the best method is probably just personal, like conversation, private conversation that you're bringing a lot of empathy into. That's something I spend a lot of time helping folks get better at. It's hard. And then if we're trying to like instill wonder, trying to like remind folks that the world is not all bleak and bad, I think street art is my favorite way to do that. And those are like the two most different things that I do regularly. One involves an incredible empathetic lift, and I'm usually like very tired at the end. And then the street art instilling joy, bringing silliness and wonder is like that refills my emotional tank. That makes me happy. But both are important, and both need to be happening like in a greater science communication ecosystem. I think it can't all be heavy, and it can't all be light and silly. You need to do both, but different approaches are necessary for both of those like goals.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing those insights. For the last the time that we have remaining, we're going to break into breakout groups, and each breakout group will be held by one of our hosts, and they'll be able to work with you individually to create a graphical abstract, or if you have additional questions, perhaps they can just answer those as well. So you're going to receive very shortly an invitation on your screen to join a group. So if you just click join that group, then you will be placed in your group. So Natalia, can you go ahead and put those groups up, please?